Now, I don't know. This was sent to me by email, so I don't know if this is a guy or a girl. It kind of looks like a guy to me, but I'm not going to be sexist or biased. But this is what it says. I feel like I'm too old to go on dating websites. It's not really my thing, but I still want to get married. Any advice to you? Now, I went and kind of Googled, because I've been married for a long time, and it seems like the culture's dating scene has changed drastically since culture's dating scene has... I lived in that world, so I'm like, what is it? What is this online dating thing? And so here's some statistics for you guys that maybe like me and don't know. Currently, well, this is 2021, 323.9 million people are using a dating app, online dating. And I believe this is no, it can't be the United States. This must be worldwide. 1 in 5 U.S. internet, it is U.S., United States internet users are using an online dating app. 1 in 5 people are dating online. A quarter of online dating users don't want a commitment. That's an issue. A quarter of the people on there don't want a commitment. So what are they on there for? Here's some more. 3/4 of the online dating users want some kind of commitment. 19% of online dating users have talked to 11 plus people at once. So they're online, they're going on these websites, and then they're talking to, if I'm a guy, they're talking to 10 other chicks while they're talking to you. It's like, hello. $304 million cost to romance scams, and I looked on it earlier. This is like a multi-billion-dollar industry. And then there's one more that I wanted to share on here. Does online dating work? And it has, I think, 14% of the online dating world get married. And they're like, oh, what a great success. Almost 14% of online daters get married, which to me is like, I don't know that I'm loving those statistics. But anyway, from a girl's perspective, sorry to throw all that in there, what would you tell this person, guy or girl, about finding a relationship online?
Well, I guess I'm reading the question to be different than that they're not looking it to be online.
That's what I meant. Is if you're not going to go online, how do you approach it? What do you do? And this is from a girl's perspective, right? So what would you say?
If I was in that situation, older in life, I don't think it would be much different than when I was younger, in that I'm looking for someone who's like-minded. And so the places that I'm at is where I would start. I would never start online. I wouldn't start with strangers in a context where there's not anything vettable and real in front of you. And so I think real life is where you look. And I don't think, I don't know. So I've talked to many different people in different mindsets about this, and some are like in pursuit, and some are just waiting for the Lord to bring someone. And I do think that what Scripture speaks of is that the Lord has that for you if you have that desire in your heart. And so waiting on the Lord for that is what I find Scripture speaks to the very most. But again, wisdom speaks to what interest do you want that person to have, and it would be similar to your interests. So I would assume that you would start with places that you serve, and you would start with places that you dwell on a regular basis, basically. So my advice is, yes, don't go on the dating website. That's my advice. Stay clear of the chaos and industry that it has become, because it is not personal. It is not for a healthy relationship. It's not, none of that, it's not based on any longevity in that case. Unfortunately, I think it is just a monetary means for different websites, and so the Lord has so much more for you in relationships than that. And I think it comes down to you being prayerful about it, and that's the same thing that I would say if you were younger. So
I'll throw this in there before you go, Chris. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, so and I'm not knocking on the websites. Like what is christianmingle.com? I don't know even that's a thing today. And I know people that have gone on dating websites and actually married somebody, and they've had great relationships. So I'm not saying it's evil or anything like that. Just to be clear. But in the college world that you live in, what are you seeing in the dating relationship? And to add to that, I feel like we're in this weird time culturally where for a guy it's almost become like this huge thing where it's like, how do I go up and talk to a girl? And then the culture treats that like, am I going to be on a TikTok video because I shamed somebody or I said the wrong thing? Like, I'm getting nervous just thinking about this, and I'm not even involved. So since you are in the college world, what do you see with the kids? Is it church, youth group? Where do they meet? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, with this question, with him saying or her saying, I feel like I'm too old, I would just submit that you are almost trying to take it into your own hands if you're stepping out to do things that you're uncomfortable to do. And so if you're not comfortable with dating websites, if that's not something God's asked you to go do, then I would just steer clear. Psalm 37 is really clear. You trust in the Lord. You dwell on his faithfulness. It says that you're to delight yourself also in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. And so if marriage is a desire of your heart, then you trust in the Lord. And you feed on God's faithfulness, and you just hang out and you do the things God's called you to do. And, I think about my children. My kids don't work to get the things that they need. My kids don't have to work and figure out plans how to get the next meal at the house or how to get me to provide for them. I just provide for them because I love them. And so I think sometimes that we have this idea that, if we're getting too old, now we have to take it in our own hands. Or, maybe we're not finding anyone at church, so now we have to step out and go to the bars or go to, the extracurricular things or whatever. But I would just say, wherever God calls you to be, that's where you be. And then God's going to give you the desires of your heart. And that's scriptural. There's a passage in Proverbs 10, and it says, the fear of the wicked will come upon him, and the desire of the righteous will be granted. So be righteous, love the Lord, follow him faithfully. I would encourage the young adults or even the older unmarried, don't sit on social media. Don't make that your friendship group. And I do think that's the disconnect now. I don't know if I agree with Matt. I don't think that the young adults are timid that they're going to get in trouble for talking to girls. I think that they've lost their social skills because this is how they communicate all day. And then to actually have to walk up and do it face to face is they're not trained and they have no motivation. The culture right now that we're living in, our young kids have no drive. They have no motivation. The young adult boys will sit on video games for 14 hours of the day after they get home they will. They'll go to part-time jobs and then sit on Call of Duty or Fortnite, and that will be their life, and they'll wonder why they're single. And so I would just encourage you. Scripture says that we're to love others, we're to serve others, we're to pour out our lives. And I met my husband doing that. I was serving and pouring out my life. Yep. And that's where Lindsay met her husband, and that's where the majority of us are finding our spouses in the Christian culture. And so I would just encourage you to not try to be taking things in your own hand, to be prayerful about what God has for you. Who wants to step out and go get 10 relationships? I can go find 10 guys today if I wasn't married, but 10 of those relationships might not be what God has for me, so I'm going to have 10 broken hearts or 10 wasted energies. And so instead, how about just don't make that effort, pray about it, seek the Lord, and go do the things God calls me to do. And with that, I would mean, where are you supposed to be serving? Where are you supposed to be working? Where are you supposed to be putting your time? But get outside of social media, get outside of social, watching Netflix and all those things. You're going to have to maybe online dating. I think God uses a lot of crazy, stupid things that the world comes up with for his glory, but I don't see a lot of fruit in that. So
yeah, I was going to throw that in there if you didn't bring it up, is that, boy, I see the young men, and I'm sorry if we're not answering your question because you admit that you're in the older generation, but there's so many young men who do not know how to socialize or talk to people. Now, I'm an introvert. I'm not a social butterfly. It's awkward to me when I'm trying, but it's like a whole nother level from what you said, where they're living in their mom's basement. They have no drive, no job.
No drive.
Absolutely flaky in their spiritual life or their walk with God, playing video games. And then the girls, that I see, they're like, I don't know what to do with that. I mean, how do you approach that? So if you're if you're one of those if you're one of those people, man, grow up, mature, start getting your act together, and so that you can actually be somebody that's dateable. And I think that's totally practical advice for the older person, though. And this is what I have in my mind. Getting lonely, getting to the point where you're kind of just worn out, you're frustrated because you want to be married, it's later in life. what would you do to encourage someone, or maybe it goes back to what you've already said, is just trust and rest in the Lord. But what I've seen in the older people in that situation, or maybe they've had a spouse die, they get remarried and they get nervous about being alone or whatever, is that they settle. They settle for somebody just because they're lonely. Would you say anything for, the older woman, the older man who is just feeling discouraged because they're by themselves and they're trying to get married in our weird culture that we have?
I don't think that that's just an old age thing. I think that if you're self-focused, is feeling lonely, if it's all of those things, and it's, again, you're not doing any of the things that Christy was talking about or that you're talking about, where my life is being poured out because I'm other-centered, then your focus is going to be on there, and we can tend to settle because our eyes aren't outside of that. So I guess I don't think that that's necessarily confined. I can tell you I have many conversations with young people who are settling for the same mindset of basically it's a self-focused thing.
Yeah.
And so the pursuit of a spouse is coming from a selfish perspective, and not that the Lord doesn't place it on your heart, but again, I'm to be other-centered and Christ-centered, and he has things for you to do. He has things for you to serve in, and he has ways for you to pour out your life in return. And so if that is your pursuit, you're going to automatically know the Lord better. You're going to know his character better. You're not going to want to settle because you're going to know that you can trust him. So it's your walk. I think that you would examine at that point to answer your question. But I don't think it's confined to being older.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think you need to trust the Lord in the sense that what God has for us is good. And whatever the Lord has for me, good or bad, is the best I can ever get. Yep. Even if I don't view it as good. And so to settle is to go for something that God doesn't have for me. And in that, I'm stepping outside of his will. And so I just say, stay in the Lord's will. If I stay in his will, I'm safe. And I would rather be safe in the Lord's will and be unmarried than to be married and out of God's will. I love the Lord too much. I want to be faithful to the Lord, loyal to God.
I'm trying to pull up scripture for you for a biblical reference, and my computer's not working. It's in 1 Corinthians. I believe it's in chapter 7. But go through and read that. We're not going to take time to exegete the whole thing here, but it talks about if you're not married, don't seek a wife. If you're married, don't seek to be loose from a wife. But it goes to the point where they're saying, concentrate on serving the Lord, and a lot of the joy and the loneliness issues get taken care of because you're actually having a walk with God. And then when that happens and your focus is on the Lord, things tend to line up in your life, whether it's personal relationships, marriage, where you're supposed to be at in life, your purpose. It's all found in the Lord. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's right under verse 25.
So go through and read that. And I know sometimes it's not like, you want to be married, and the verse is like, but don't seek to be married. Well, how in the world does that happen? But it comes down to where your heart's at, so that it's set on the Lord, and he guides your paths, and you're not trying to make it happen, in a nutshell. But go through. Yeah. I'll let you read that.
Godliness with contentment is great gain, is
Amen.
what Scripture says. And that is great gain. Godliness with contentment. So be content where you're at.